Hi everyone, today we're going to have a look inside this sketchbook which I finished just the other day, and not only am I proud to have finished a sketchbook because it doesn't happen very often with me, but this one I feel has seen some of the biggest growth in my work, and it's been really instrumental in how I approach my finished work. It's given me confidence. It's loosened me up, and I just want to share all of that with you because I'm hoping that if there are some of you out there who are finding it difficult to get into a sketchbook practice, or you find sketchbooks a bit intimidating, because I know there are other people like me out there. I always found sketchbooks a bit intimidating. It's that fear of starting a new one and ruining it. Well, this sketchbook is imperfect. You're going to see a realistic sketchbook tour. So I think we should just get into it. Without further ado, let's open it up and have a look. So I have my cup of tea here. Hopefully it won't go cold. I've managed to drink most of it, but I want to have a little sip as I go along. So on the first page, you can see that it says it's unfinished. And yeah, I didn't really mess up the first page, but it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. So I did this while I was on a Zoom call. This was in July of last year, the Cozy Creative Club Zoom session. Now, this was a Zoom session that I used to hold with members of my Cozy Creative Club on Patreon. We've since renamed the Patreon tiers. It's now the Arts and Crafts Club, but the Cozy Creative Club was a lot of fun. We used to just kind of hang out and work on our own projects a lot of the time, have a chat. And I now do that each month on my Patreon still, but I also have a timed drawing session. So I do two things. You'll be seeing some of those drawings later on. But I used gouache for this, and I remember when I was working on it, I felt like I didn't really know where it was going, because at this point, I was only starting to paint a bit more loosely, and I was a bit unsure of myself. And I know that I thought maybe after the session I'll finish it off, but you know what? I lost interest. I didn't want to. It wasn't going the way I wanted it to. I didn't feel I was gaining anything from it, so I just decided to leave it as it was. So you can see I've added a bit of pencil over the top in different areas. Do you like my pointy stick? I got my brush to point with, so I'm not covering up the page. I shouldn't have had that tea. I feel like I'm suppressing a burp all the while, so please excuse me. Yes, so I've left it unfinished, and I actually decided to continue with this sketchbook. This is a pith sketchbook, by the way. They're relatively expensive. They're not super expensive, but they're not super cheap, but they are one of my favourite sketchbooks ever because they lay flat. The paper is amazing. It's this kind of off-white, creamy coloured paper, and it pretty much takes everything you throw at it. The size of this one, by the way, is called the Lumia. They do a larger one called the Oro Blanco, which I used to really like, but was a little bit intimidated by. They do smaller ones too, but this is my favourite size. It's a nice sort of in-between size. So yeah, I carried on, even though I had kind of messed up the first page. So that in itself is a little win, because years ago, I would have given up and just abandoned the sketchbook because I was such an annoying perfectionist. It used to annoy me, and I'm sure it annoyed many other people. Anyway, so this spread was a landscapes and clouds Zoom session by my friend Crixis. She also has a Patreon, and I like to join in with her drawing sessions too. So they're always timed drawing sessions. And we had 20 minutes for each of these. I watched on the replay. It says here, replay 29th of July 24. I remember sitting down after breakfast one morning in the summer and just deciding that I was going to watch the replay because I'd missed the live session that time, and I really liked the idea of doing landscapes and clouds. Clouds are something that I've really struggled with. They're something I don't feel confident in painting, so anytime I can get some practice is a good thing. And I do actually quite like these little drawings. I used my art travel kit, the one that's in the Peg and All mini Sendak roll. So I have a little gouache palette in that. So I used that for the base, and then I worked over the top in coloured pencil. I think I might have actually added a little bit of neo colour here I can't quite remember, but it looks as if I did. So yeah, that was a fun little session and it was really good practice for me. Okay, one thing you might notice as we go through this sketchbook is I leave a page in between each of the spreads, just because I don't know whether I'm going to do this again in my next sketchbook, but just because sometimes things show through a little bit onto that page, and I don't know, I kind of like starting on a really fresh page where I can't see any of the previous work. Everyone uses sketchbooks differently. That's how I'm using this one. I may not do that in the future, as I say, but we'll see. This was a themed Patreon Zoom session on toadstools and mushrooms. And I did this on the 20th of August last year, and I used gouache for these. So these were all timed paintings, and I think this is only part of that session. I think I have maybe 1 or 2 other sketchbooks with sketches from that session in, but I love this colour palette that I've used here, and it makes me happy to look at this one because I feel like I was really finally allowing myself to paint even more loosely, which is something that I've really struggled with. And yeah, I look at it now and I really like it. I mean, I remember not liking this mushroom here because I don't know, he just looks a bit blobby and a bit weird, but I do really like the other ones, and I think in particular I really love the delicacy of these and this little pine branch here. But yeah, one thing that I've noticed about keeping a sketchbook is that when I look back on the drawings or the paintings in it, it reminds me of a particular time or the people that were at that session or the conversations we had or just the general feeling of it. It's so nice. It's almost like keeping a diary. So yeah, this is one thing that I found with sketchbooks that has actually surprised me, how much kind of emotion I attach to the different spreads. So this was a Patreon Zoom session from September of last year, and I chose the theme heading into autumn, I think mainly because I wanted to actually practice drawing more toadstools. I thought if I have an autumn theme, I can do the toadstools again. But yeah, we have some gourds here, or squash, or whatever you want to call them, some autumn leaves and berries and so on. And then this was a landscape scene. One thing that strikes me with this is that I can see, you may not be able to see, but I can see, and I know that I wasn't confident in using coloured pencils in a very loose way at this point. So I know that I was a little bit anxious when I was working on this. I remember working on this one in particular and feeling like I'd hardly got anything done in the time. I mean, these are meant to be trees and bushes, but I didn't get a chance to really make them look like they are. At the top here it says there were 3 10-minute sketches and 1 20. I don't know which is which. I never feel like I get really more done in 20 minutes as opposed to 10 or 15, which is really interesting. You would think that you would come up with a much more finished looking sketch if you had longer, but I haven't found that's the case. I actually find that I work better when I work quicker. But as we go through this sketchbook, you're going to see a real variety. You're going to see things that I would consider are a bit embarrassing and not very good, but this is what sketchbooks are. And I hope that this encourages you that not every sketchbook, contrary to what you might see a lot of the time on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram or whatever, they're not perfect. They're just places to experiment. It's like a laboratory. Just look at it as your laboratory and just do your experiments in there. Have fun playing around. You don't have to do what I'm doing and sit here in front of thousands of people and share your sketchbook. You can just keep it to yourself and just enjoy keeping one, because there were times throughout this sketchbook where I was so annoyed with myself because I felt like I'd done a really crappy page. This one isn't, by the way. I really like this page. But there were several times throughout the sketchbook where I felt like that, And I felt like just, oh gosh, shall I just put it aside and start a new one? And I was like, no, Natasha, you're going to finish this sketchbook, and finish it I have. So anyway, let's get on to this one. So this was from the 29th of September, and this was actually a Patreon sketchbook session. It was a video I recorded for them, and I did it as if I was doing a Zoom drawing session, in that I did timed drawings. These are reference images, or I worked from reference images rather, from Unsplash. Unsplash is a really good website to use if you want some reference images, and they're basically copyright free, royalty free, so you can just use them to practice your painting. And I think I set myself the challenge of just using gouache, and I think nothing else, so I just used my gouache palette for these. But I really liked the way this page looked, and this is the start of me painting in and including lettering on my sketchbook pages. This is something I've decided I really love. I love the combination of words and images, and years ago I would have not allowed myself to do this, because I would have thought, if you can't write that perfectly, it's going to look terrible. But I've decided that if it looks a bit wonky, it's all the better for it. So I really enjoy using watercolour to just add a little bit of writing now. Okay, so this page has probably surprised you. It's a little bit different to what I would normally do. This was our pre-Halloween time drawing session called Slightly Spooky. So I wanted a slightly spooky theme without it being gory or too scary. So we had, I think he's a raven. Is he a raven or a crow? I don't know. I can't remember. We had a man dressed up as a ghost. Look at his legs. And one of what I thought was going to be my favourite images to draw, or paint rather, and it turned out to be maybe the one I enjoyed the least. It looks so clunky. Is this house. It was like an abandoned house that looked like it could potentially be haunted, and I loved the reference image of it, and I didn't do it justice. It looks really bad. Dominic has done a really good spread of this session. His turned out really, really well. He actually sometimes joins me in the live Zoom session, so there you go. He's an honorary Patreon member. He doesn't always join in, but sometimes he likes to, and he's a very good artist. So yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, about this one at the bottom. Yeah, this graveyard kind of turned out a bit weird. It's a fun page. I was quite disappointed with it when I did it, because I felt like I could have done so much better. I mean, I quite liked the bird, but I was like, I'm not sure about the rest. But now I look at it, all I remember is the fun that we had during that session, and I actually think it's quite a fun page, even though it's really quite bad. I feel like the thing is with this video, the better stuff is going to be at the end. So I feel like I should have started at the end and gone the other way. So you're going through all of this before you get to the end, but I think it's good to share absolutely everything. So this was an Autumn Trees Crixus Zoom session. So my friend's Zoom again on the 27th of October. And this is one that I actually gave up on. I felt like I wasn't really in the mood for drawing, which happens sometimes. I say drawing, painting, sketching. A lot of these are paintings and not really drawings. I felt like I was really struggling with this spread, and the owl, I mean, I quite like him actually, but I don't know what I was doing here. And this one I actually have written, I've given up on this one as I'm not sure where I'm going with it. It was a beautiful reference image of a house in autumnal trees, and it looked like one of those lovely American houses. And I just sort of like drew the house in really roughly. And I think then I thought I was going to paint it or something, but it was all looking so bad, and I think I just kind of gave up. So those of you who are regular viewers of my YouTube channel might recognise this page, because this was one I did on camera for a video back in November for my YouTube channel, and it's a cozy creative session. Now I've only done a couple of these because I was unsure of how much you're enjoying them. They've never been particularly popular videos. I mean, they seem to have a core of people who really love them, but generally speaking, they don't ever really reach a wider audience. So I've only done 2. I might do more. I would love to do more because I love doing this kind of video with you. And the theme for this was autumn woodland, and I just had fun filling this page with different autumn woodland images. And I remember I had a bit of trouble doing this owl, but now I really like him, and he's actually turned into one of my favourite things on this page, which is weird because I remember at the time I was like, I've messed up the page. I was really worried that I'd made a mess of the owl, but I actually think he's really cute. So yeah, I like this page. It brings back again another nice memory of filming that video for you. And I love how the gouache, I think this is gouache and not watercolour. I love how the gouache has kind of run here and you've got all the different colours. It looks really, really nice. I love when paint does that. Okay, so this is all things cozy. That was the theme of this Patreon Zoom session. This was on my Patreon, and this was in the autumn, so it's the 9th of November, and I picked lots of cozy images for us to work from. This is only part of that session. Again, I've done some more in another sketchbook, but we have a loaf of bread there, a little kettle. It was like a little slightly, I think, antique vintage type of kettle, and a lady in her cozy jumper and hat looking out to sea. And I really enjoyed doing this one. I thought at the time I was struggling with the bread, but I quite like it now. And I really love the looseness and how I've allowed the paint to run here. And I've gone over the top. I'm thinking, is that just coloured pencil? Is that... I actually think it's Derwent Inktense. I think I went over the top with the Inktense. Anyway, that was 15 minutes. That was 10 and that was 10. I actually like it when I put the... I must remember to always put the times, I think, because it's quite interesting to see that. Okay, the next page is from Patreon in November 2024. This was a video I did. I think it was just showing different ways of layering mixed media. So that's the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Brush Pen with coloured pencil over the top. Then we've got Winsor & Newton Pro Marker watercolour with coloured pencil. Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolour marker with Neocolour over the top. And I was just demonstrating the different Neocolours. Neocolour 1, which isn't water soluble. Neocolour 2, which is. And this was using Derwent drawing pencils, showing how to kind of layer on the trees to add a bit of depth and shadow and so on. And then here I've used deep light watercolours. Oh, and at the top, that's the Rower and Klingner sketch ink. Do you know, looking at this, I see how much I love the one that's just in watercolours. That's just such a nice tree or tree trunk. It looks much more natural to me. I think using watercolour and gouache a lot recently, rather than specifically like mixed media where I'm really layering the materials, that seems to have loosened me up more than anything, is just allowing myself to paint in watercolour and gouache without adding anything else, using slightly larger brushes. I know to some people my brushes wouldn't be large, it's all relative, but slightly larger brushes than I used to use. And yeah, just really allowing the watercolour and gouache to do its thing, adding lots of water, not trying to control it too much. That's been instrumental in even moving my finished work along, because even though you would look at my finished work and think it's very precise, it certainly is compared to my sketchbook work, it's got a liveliness now and an energy that it didn't have before. And that's directly through working in sketchbooks like this. Okay, this is the perfect example of an absolute disaster of a page. So we have an abandoned session here. So this was a Patreon Zoom session. I like it when I write notes because it's a good reminder. Winter, nature and landscapes, time drawings. Everything went wrong during this session, so I stopped drawing and chatted instead. So yeah, this was a session I was hosting with my Patreon members, and I remember just going, I really am not feeling this tonight. So I basically just put the images up on the screen and pretty much chatted to them while they were drawing, and just left this because it absolutely terrible. I don't know what I was doing here. You see, I think I go wrong when I try to use too many different media, too many different, no, too many different mediums, whatever, you know what I mean. This just looks awful. I think I tried to put Neo Colour over the top of Pitt pen, and I don't know what else I've used here. Is this just coloured pencil? I'm not sure, but yeah. Abandoned, and I was really annoyed at the time, but now I don't care. It's part of this sketchbook story. Okay, so now we're moving in to 2025, and I think we're getting better. What do you think? So this was a Patreon Zoom session, again, that I held with my patrons, and Dominic joined in on this one too, I believe. This was images from Map Crunch, so I called it Map Crunching. Map Crunch, if you don't know, is a website where you get shown random street views from across the world. You can choose to tailor it to just one country if you want. I chose the UK for these. And yeah, we just drew from those images. I love that site when you just want something really random to draw and you want to set yourself a challenge perhaps. It's good to go on there. Just let it choose a street view and just paint it, draw it, just have fun with it. So this was in February, and I have written the timings here. So this landscape was 10 minutes. This little house with the washing hanging outside was 10. This was 15. That surprises me that I took 15 minutes to do that. But also during these sessions, I'm chatting a lot. So when you're hosting the session, you have to be aware of, like, are people writing in the chat? I want to be chatting to people, you know, talking to people. And also sometimes there are latecomers and I need to let them in and all of that. So you're doing all the admin side as well as drawing. So yeah, sometimes it takes me longer than it would if I was just joining in. I think this little house with the car outside, this little cottage, took 15 minutes. And then I think this took 10. It looks like I've got 5 images here. Is that right? I've sort of done the thing where I've blended them all in, which I quite like, but I'm unsure as to where that one ends and that one starts. I guess that one goes to there and then that one's that. I don't know. Anyway, for this, I used my gouache palette again, which I love to use for the Zoom sessions because it's all just there. It's not too big. It's really easy to reach for. And I go over the top a lot of the time now with Derwent Inktense because they're water-soluble pencils and they create some nice effects. So you can use them dry, you can wet them, you can draw into wet paint with them, which you can't really do with normal coloured pencils. So yeah, love using those. So this looks like a bit of a bear page, doesn't it? I think I only did some of the prompts on this session. I have a feeling that there were probably 5 or 6 because Crixus normally does 5 or 6 prompts and I've only done 3. I've done some embroidery, yarn and scissors and knitting. This is sketching hobbies and this is a Zoom session from March. And yeah, I just used coloured pencils and I think a base of like the Pitt artist pens or something like that. They're like an India ink pen and I like to go over the top of those with pencil. I think it's really simple. I keep meaning to make a video actually about my pared down mixed media supplies because I found that less is more, by the way. Maybe that's for another time. We'll talk about that another time. Okay, this page, look at this bird. What's happened to his legs? And also, look at his kneecaps. I've abandoned him. He was part of a video I was doing for Patreon and yeah, I basically gave up. I'll show you the finished one in a minute. Yeah, he's there. But In the meantime, after abandoning that bird, I obviously had another session with Crixus because this is lighthouses. Oh, I remember this session. This was on the 22nd of March and I was a bit late to this one, so I only got an opportunity to do 2 of the lighthouses in that session. I think there were probably 4 or 5, but I only got to do 2. But sometimes it's just fun to join in when you can and not put pressure on yourself, you know, just, I mean, I don't mind if people join my sessions halfway through, or if they just want to come and sit and chat with us, it doesn't matter. Anything is good. So I really enjoyed doing these, and I actually used deep light watercolours for these. So this isn't gouache, this is watercolour. And yeah, I really like how these turned out. They were super quick. I think we had like 10 minutes or something for each one. And I got asked a question in the middle of one of these and had to run off and try and find the answer. Somebody asked me a question and I needed to go and check something out. So I didn't even get the full length of time. But yeah, they're really fun. And I love the looseness of this one in particular. So here's the second attempt at that bird, and he turned out a bit better. This was for a Patreon video where I talked about drawing from vintage bird illustrations and the value of sometimes using vintage books, vintage illustrations to work from, because it's a slightly different style and it can give you just, I don't know, broader reference, different ideas, that kind of thing. So this was a book by C.F. Tunnicliffe. I really love his work. And yeah, it's a dunlin, this little water bird. And so I tried to kind of do it as he had done it. I tried to make it into my style, but I think it actually turned out being quite close to his bird. Obviously not as good, but quite close. Yeah, that was in March, so that was only last month. So this was the Patreon time-lapse video from March 2025. You may think that this looks familiar, and it's because I made a YouTube video. My last YouTube video was me doing a painting on a loose sheet of paper while answering a Q&A. You'd sent me some questions, so I was answering them. And I was basing it on this sketchbook page. I thought it would be fun to do the sketchbook page again, but outside of my sketchbook, and see whether I would make it different this time. And it did turn out kind of similar, but also with some variation, which was interesting. I used deep light watercolours for this. I will leave links to deep light below, by the way, and there is a discount code as well if you want it. So yeah, since March, I've been doing on my Patreon a time-lapse video in addition to the 2 other exclusive videos I do each month. The time-lapse video is a short one, and it's usually, I don't know, I've only done 2, but they're like 7-8 minutes long. I don't narrate those ones, and I just show the progression of a piece. And I think they're quite interesting to watch. I love watching time lapses because I think you can actually learn quite a lot. Even without narration, you can see how the artist is working and applying the paint and so on. So it's quite interesting. So yeah, I don't do the podcast anymore, but I've switched it to a time-lapse video. And I had a lot of fun doing this one. I love the colour palette of that. Quite moody. Yeah, I started something and abandoned it on that page. Okay, this one was so much fun. This is a recent session. This was the 12th of April, and I did Signs of Spring with my Patreon members, and we had 5 prompts. Yeah, 5 prompts, and I managed to fit them all on the double page spread, which is something I'm trying to do now. I'm trying not to work across several sketchbooks, but instead keep like one session all on the same couple of pages. And I did this little rabbit, and I remember when I did him, I was worried because he looked a bit funny, but now I just think he looks incredibly cute. So he's become one of my favourite things on this page. But we did Blossom, we did a nest, and then a close-up of a nest with these amazing blue eggs in it, and a blackbird with a little wiggly worm in his mouth, beak. I was going to put little Signs of Spring writing up here, and I messed it up because I tried to do it during the session, and because all of this was wet here, I couldn't lean on it properly. I think it was just this one that was wet actually, because I think he was the last thing I did, I think. Anyway, it was wet there and I couldn't lean properly to do the writing, so it got all messed up and I was like, I'm going to have to stick that nest up there. So it looks like it's been a bit squished in, but I really like this page. I love the colour palette. Now, did I use deep light paints? I think I might have done. Might have used watercolour, and then over the top I have used the Derwent Inktense pencils, which is fast becoming one of my favourite combos. Okay, we're on to the last two now. So this one was Spring Flowers. This was a Zoom that I actually hosted with Crixus. So occasionally we do a bonus Zoom for our Patreon members and we co-host a session together for them. We chose the theme Spring Flowers and I did some snowdrops, daffodils, like, wild garlic, like, crabapple, like, crocuses, no like. I've actually written dodgy because they really are dodgy. Maybe not those ones so much, I don't know. Anyway, this went completely wrong. What I had to do was lift all of the paint off. I wetted it, lifted all of the paint off and then repainted it, and that's why it looks all blurry, because I had to paint it on a wet background. But it actually looks okay, and I find this page brings me a lot of joy when I look at it, because that was such a brilliant session. And I love co-hosting with Crixus, it's so much fun. Okay, so we're on to the last page, and this is a Crixus Patreon session from just a couple of evenings ago. And she gave us 6 pictures, I think it's 6 pictures of blue tits to work from. And they may not look much like blue tits because I decided that I was going to do it monochromatically. And I used a deep light colour called Captain's Grey. And so I just kind of concentrated on sort of like the tonal values and getting the shape of the bird and so on. And I was trying to paint super loosely. What I haven't said actually, which I probably should have done, is that I don't pre-plan the drawings when I'm working like this in these sessions. So I will just go straight in with the paint and there's no pre-planning. So I'm just correcting as I go along. So there's a blue tit kind of coming out of a bird box. Got a song on branches, he was singing. This little fledgling blue tit was like a little puffball, so he's being fed by the adult. And then we got to this one. This, I don't know what happened here. We had to do a flying bird, which also I really find very hard to do, but trying to fit it in this section, I didn't leave myself much space, and we didn't know what the images were going to be before we saw them, so I didn't know that this one was going to need more room. So I just, I did what I did, and it looks funny, but you know what? It's a sketchbook. Anyway, I hope that this has inspired you. If you're somebody who feels like you have to keep every sketchbook perfect, and it has to look like this, I don't know, every page has to look like an amazing finished work of art, you really don't have to use a sketchbook like that, and don't put the pressure on yourself. Just enjoy it, because this brings me so much joy to look through. And not only that, I have learnt so much throughout the 9 months I have used this sketchbook. So during that time, I've also been using other sketchbooks. This isn't the only one, it's not exclusively this one in 9 months, but I've used this one, as I said on the front cover, entirely for video sessions for either YouTube or Patreon, and for Zoom sessions. So that's what that's been kept for. I'm going to be starting a new one. I look forward to starting it and it'll be interesting to see how it differs from this one. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and then hopefully it can reach more people. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already and you like what you see, maybe consider subscribing. It's free and you can become a part of our community. Okay, everyone, thank you for watching. And if you got to the end, what can our code word be this time? I know, I want you to put in the comments blue tit. If you write blue, oh no, maybe not blue tit, because that sounds a bit rude. Maybe it will think it's something rude if you write that. Okay, if you get to the end of this video, write imperfect sketchbooks. So imperfect sketchbooks. We don't want perfection. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for fun. Okay, if you write imperfect sketchbooks, I'll know you made it to the end of the video. So thank you if you did, and I will see you very, very soon. Take care, everyone.